Well, it was only a matter of time before the Zionists and the AIPAC lobby and the controlled members of Congress would call for boots on the ground in Iran. Yes, Americans will die to fight Iran, and you will like it, says Senator Lindsey Graham. Watch.
Can you guarantee that? Can President Trump in any form, can you make the commitment that this would not lead to a longer war?
I can guarantee you that if the Ayatollah gets a nuclear weapon, he will use it. I believe that with all my heart and soul. So the men and women who serve, they're the ones going, not people answering a poll. And if you ask them, would you be willing to risk your life to stop the Ayatollah from having a nuclear weapon? All of them would say yes, because it makes their country, our country, safer. So we live in a world where you got to confront problems. You want to avoid World War III? Learn the lessons from World War II. People in World War II appeased Hitler to the point that it got so much out of hand, we had a world war and 60 million people got killed. So we live in a world where you pay now or you pay later. Let's stop this threat before he gets a nuclear weapon. Let's end this reign of terror. Let's do it now. It's not going to take 20 months, but I can't guarantee you your freedom and your safety unless we're willing to fight for it. I can guarantee you this: if we don't fight for our freedom, we will lose it.
Yeah, well, Senator.
Yeah, so World War II, the lesson from World War II, create a false flag in Pearl Harbor, allow us to get dragged into this war when Japan had multiple times ahead of that offered negotiated peace. So maybe we could learn that lesson from World War II instead of 60 million people dying.
And here's another lesson we could learn from, Libya, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan, Serbia, Panama. All of those were military operations based on lies. Also, he is asking us to trust him that Iran would have. This will now be the justification going forward. It would have happened. You are asked to swallow that big line of shit in order to justify. So it's a hypothetical that will never need to be proved. No, never. So you can swallow that if you want to. That is what they're asking for. This is something Philip says all the time. You can't prove a negative.
Yeah.
You can't prove this would. This is a Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It's like one world in which Iran does. We are in the world in which Iran does not. But they're asking us to believe both things simultaneously.
Well, and if you listen to the Mockingbird media right now, of course, the Mockingbird media absolutely wants you to be dragged into this war. We are vehemently anti-war on this show. And so you're going to see this. I mean, it doesn't matter what legacy media you're watching right now. They want this war. So here's the latest. Sources say Trump has already decided to go to war with Iran. He's already made this decision, although he's playing like in front of the cameras. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to attack more nuclear sites. I don't know. The U.S. could strike as soon as tomorrow. The third U.S. aircraft carrier is now heading off the coast of Israel, is heading to the coast of Israel. Americans are being told, get out of Israel right now. Israeli Ambassador Mike Huckabee posting this urgent notice. American citizens wanting to leave Israel. U.S. Embassy in Israel is working on evacuation flights and cruise ship departures. You must enroll at the Smart Travel Enrollment Program. You will be alerted with updates. The U.S. has already evacuated the Al Udeid air base in Qatar, one of the largest U.S. military bases in the Middle East. They are preparing for war, evacuating military bases within range of Iranian missiles. Moscow.
How can they get them out when all flights are grounded out of Israel?
That's out of Qatar.
Well, I read an article last night I read an article last night that Netanyahu wasn't letting people leave, and so the only people with money to get cruise ships were actually getting out.
That's true. We've reported that in the newsletter that no flights are allowed out of Tel Aviv. So how, I guess, Americans get exceptions?
Maybe American flights orchestrated by the State Department, U.S. State Department on these evacuation flights. So anyway, Moscow just issued a strongly worded statement saying the United States should not even consider directly participating in Israel's war of aggression against Iran. Quote, avoid giving military aid to Israel or even thinking about it, end quote. It's looking likely that Russia will aid Iran directly. And Russian President Putin just spoke out this morning saying that America is ruled by dark forces in suits that force U.S. presidents to do things a certain way. Watch.
Понимаете, я уже общался и с одним президентом США, и с другим, и с третьим. Президенты приходят и уходят, а политика не меняется. Знаете почему? Потому что очень сильна власть бюрократии. Вот человека избрали, он приходит с одними идеями, к нему приходят люди с кейсами, хорошо одетые и в темных, как у меня, костюмах, но только не с красным галстуком, а с черным или с темно-синим. И начинают объяснять, как нужно делать. И все сразу меняется, понимаете? Это происходит от одной администрации к другой.
My dude, truer words were never spoken. He has just explained the uniparty.
I mean, exactly. So you have literally presidents get elected, they run on being a peace president, and then suddenly these dark forces arrive and tell you, no, this is how it actually works. This is what's actually going on. So you are going to war with Iran, whether you like it or not, Mr. President. We've got the tapes, we've got the blackmail, we've got everything that our pal Jeffrey Epstein had. So you're going to go to war with Iran, whether you like it or not. Well, if you know anything about Redacted, you know we love a good story, and nothing pairs better with a story than an exceptional wine. Sit down, hang out, enjoy a nice glass of wine with friends. Meet Franzie's Wine, inspired by Michael Franzese, the only high-ranking mafia boss to leave organized crime behind and then live to tell about it. This wine is a testament to second chances and resilience in life. From Armenia, home to the world's first vineyards, comes a unique range of 94-point wines like a Malbec and Iranian, plus a one-of-a-kind pomegranate wine. No added sulfates, just pure, unforgettable quality for a great price. Head over to franziewine.com. Use the code REDACTED for 15% off just for our viewers. Become part of a powerful story of redemption. It's a sip that you can't refuse. Our next guest says this was never about nuclear weapons. He predicted years ago that this would happen. Joshua Reed from the Red Pill Project joins us now. Joshua, great to have you here. Welcome back to the show. It's been a little too long.
Absolutely. Clayton, Natali, thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now, a lot of people, you have for years now been saying that this is about regime change. And even up a couple of months ago, you were saying the coming war with Iran is about regime change, not nuclear weapons. And you wrote this piece on your Substack, and I want to read it for our audience. For those who've been following this war through the lens of legacy media, it looks sudden, chaotic even. But for those of us watching the real chessboard, this didn't begin last week. It began with drone swarms or airstrikes. It didn't begin with drone swarms or airstrikes. It began months ago, maybe years ago, when Trump and Israel started preparing a move the deep state never anticipated, a coordinated regime collapse in Iran. So, Joshua, this was all foretold. All of the talking heads on television talking about nuclear sites, nuclear weapons, that's all garbage, isn't it?
Well, it is. And, it's interesting to watch the rhetoric on X and through the mainstream media of what's really going on, because when we start to look at Donald Trump and we understand Donald Trump from his first administration to this administration, he talks a very, very big talk, very, very extreme. But this is really to make deals in the long run. Now, when we start to look at the relationship between Donald Trump and Israel, obviously he's been very, very pro-Israel. But it's almost like there's a difference in this president than former presidents. There's almost like an acquiescence of Israel towards Donald Trump. And we saw that during the first administration. We're seeing this right now. I found it interesting, and this is kind of what got me onto all of this, that Raisi was actually killed by the Iranian regime, their own president. And I looked at the helicopter crash and I started asking questions. I said, wait, this is the first time in 50 years that something happens to the state of Iran, and they're not blaming the West. They're not blaming Israel. They're not blaming the United States. Instead, they don't want any international cooperation. They want to cover it all up. The black box has never been released. And I said, was this a regime change? Well, soon after all of this, we begin to see various different Ayatollah loyalists come in and start taking shape within the Iranian regime. They take a different stance towards Israel. And then we have the Butler, Pennsylvania incident with Donald Trump with the attempted assassination. We learned that there's 2 foreign countries listed on Crooks's phone. And we hear that one of them is Iran. A few days later, the Biden administration comes out and tells us that there's an active Iranian threat on Donald Trump's life. It was just a few weeks later, Clayton, that we see Israel go in and absolutely decimate Hezbollah, cut the head off of Hezbollah. Now, I think that this is pretty important because we know from Todd Bensman back in 2021 congressional testimony that he gave that Hezbollah Unit 910, trained by the IRGC, came over our southern border. We have thousands of them implemented throughout the United States of America, to where if Iran was going to do an active threat against Donald Trump and take him out, that's who they would use. And immediately after Butler, PA, Israel goes out there and decapitates Hezbollah, massively. And this obviously increases the tensions between Israel and Iran leading up to the October incident. And this is where it got interesting, because this is where Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince, comes in and calls for an immediate regime change in Iran. And by this time, I'd been talking about it for years, that this was the plan all along. And now we have this whole situation that we're seeing here. And I want to kind of point this out to people, that I don't think that what we are seeing is the precursor to World War III. I trust Donald Trump. I truly do. And I believe that we're watching his rhetoric, and we should not take that seriously, but understand that Donald Trump speaks these words to get people to the table. Like we just saw, it's just announced from the White House that Iran, they had talks today in Oman. Iran wants to come to Washington, D.C. and negotiate this, which means that we could potentially see in some type of ceasefire. That is if Israel does comply with that. So right now, I'm finding this whole global situation really interesting, because there's a few different things that are going to come back from this. Number one, there's going to be massive blowback in the Middle East, primarily Israel and in Iran. The Iran aspect is that we know Khamenei is not doing well health-wise. He's 80 years old. He's coming up to his older ages, that they're looking for a replacement. This is one of the main reasons they took out Raisi, because they knew that Raisi wasn't more aligned with the theocracy. He was more aligned with the IRGC. He was more of an IRGC hardliner, but at the same time, he wanted to alleviate the economic sanctions on Iran, and this would have brought him to the table with the West. And this is not something that Khamenei wanted. But now when we start to see what has unfolded over the course of the past few weeks, this whole Israeli attack, for everybody out there listening, this started with the Shahid Raji port in Israel a few weeks ago, or in Iran a few weeks ago. If anybody doesn't remember, there was a massive chemical explosion at this port. Well, what caused that? Well, it was oxidizers and ammonium perchlorate, which just happened to be the fuel for ballistic missiles. These were shipments sent directly in from China. In October of last year, Israel annihilated much of the manufacturing of ballistic missiles for Iran. So this was recuperating parts they were getting in from China, and this was the precursor to the events that we just saw. And I will state it here that Israel is the one that took out that port, and I don't know why nobody anywhere is reporting on that. But we saw the kind of the hints that all of this was coming about. Now, looking at I'm gonna call this. I'm calling for a dual regime change. We're going to see Israel is going to have massive international pressures for Netanyahu to step down, to get out of the way, for his regime to get out of the way, as well as in Iran, just because of their culture. The IRGC, Khamenei, have been shown to be incredibly weak. They have allowed their country to be attacked. And that is something that doesn't really fly too well with the Iranian people. And so we're probably most likely going to see an uprising there as well. And hopefully it's something that is more westernized in the context of a regime that does come into place.
But that's not up to us. We're not Persians. We're not Iranians. We have never successfully enacted regime change in a way that works out for the people of the region. I think I can confidently say this. But that is some of the rhetoric online is, look, women can't wear clothes that, they can't show their nose. Women, this is a authoritarian regime. It's better for them if we do this. How do you respond to that?
Well, you're absolutely right. It should be not our problem. It's not our position to go in there and to remove leaders. But I look at Donald Trump from a 40,000-foot view, that it's not the Middle East, it's not Iran, it's not Israel. Donald Trump is dealing with something more significant at that level. And this is another part of the conversation I think that needs to be introduced. See, Iran's strategic partner, the only primarily economic strategic partner, is China. What we are talking about is the expansion of the Belt and Roads Initiative. If this regime is allowed to keep on moving forward, we're talking about cheap energy that China is getting directly from Iran at 30% of market price, 60% of their oil going into China. Now, why does that matter? Because right now we are in a technological revolution. Artificial intelligence is taking over the world, not in the context of it's going to take us over, but whoever obtains artificial intelligence supremacy is going to rule the next 90 years of this planet's history. And so China and the United States are the forefront leaders of this. And the only way to curb that, as we've seen with Donald Trump over the last 5 months, is to basically stifle their ability to get energy. So 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump was in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE. He struck a massive $10 trillion worth of investments over the next 10 years into the United States, as well as he struck behind the door military deals with those people. At the same time, he was offering Iran a complete alleviation of sanctions. He was going to allow them to trade openly with, obviously, OPEC, go out there on the global market and have nuclear energy, but no, obviously, nuclear enrichment towards nuclear weapons. He came out and put a post out and said that any country doing business with Iran will not be doing business with the United States of America. He was pointing out China specifically with that because of China taking cheap energy directly from them. So the scenario that we see with Iran becoming more kind of lifting sanctions and becoming more of a player on the Western front is that China loses massive energy supply because of Iran. Iran now goes to the global market. They can trade that openly and freely. Then if China ever does get out of line, which Donald Trump obviously put high tariffs on China, which have limited their economic resources to the point where China was struggling hardcore, and they knew they had to cut a deal and do something. So when it comes down to energy, Donald Trump basically has them by the balls, if you want to call about that, because if anything happens and they're buying from Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump can just impose any type of back deals that he wants with Saudi Arabia to put pressure on China in the context of buying energy. And so when we start to look at this bigger picture, this 40,000-foot view of what Donald Trump is doing, it's all about technological supremacy over the next 5 to 10 years that is enveloping. This is why he's going out there and getting natural resources. This is why he wants to go into Greenland. This is why he wants to broker a deal with Canada. He wants the Northern Canada territories that have rich in rare earth minerals and resources. This is why he wanted to control the Panama Canal. This is why we're after massive amounts of energy and energy deals and the Eastern Donbass and Ukraine, so on and so forth. Because right now, it's resources, logistics, and energy that are going to rule and dominate the world. And Donald Trump wants to put America in the place for leading the world into the future technological world.
Joshua Reed, yeah, even we were just sitting here thinking about this. I mean, even if this is, it puts our soldiers at risk. 50,000 Americans right now in this game. If Donald Trump is playing this game, I mean, I like to believe that Donald Trump's heart is true, but this sort of dancing right now is, I mean, it's making me quite furious. It's making me honestly quite nervous about everything. So I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I hope that there's some sort of larger sort of 5D chess being played right now. Joshua, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate your take. Thanks so much, Joshua.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.